You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Hey Liam, how about a fourth Jaws film where this time it's personal?
What do you mean?
The shark wants specific premeditated revenge on the Brody family and will swim to the Bahamas to get it.
I have to say that's a real stretch, but we can make it work.
Great. Also, the shark budget is 0.
I have some notes. Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies as suggested by you. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing Jaws the Revenge.
It's not even Jaws for the Revenge. It's just Jaws the Revenge.
Yeah, they don't want to remind you how many times they're trying to get away with this.
Now, question, is this the same shark that was blown up in the first movie?
It seems to me that that's the implication.
Is this the son of the shark from the movie trying to get revenge?
Well, I don't know how many sharks they blew up in the second one or the third one, so my shark blown up lineage timeline was really shoddy going into this one.
Yeah, I have not seen either Jaws 2 or Jaws 3, nor do I really intend to.
No, I don't think you need to in order to see this movie.
Yeah, this one, you couldn't wait, Greg. You were like, yes, please.
Yes,
Give
please.
me some Jaws 4. Skipping right to dessert, huh?
Yeah.
Now, we were kind of touching on this before we started recording. Jaws 4 is famously bad. So famously bad, there are stand-up routines about Jaws the Revenge that we are familiar with from watching reruns of Just for Laughs.
Yeah, I think there's more than a few. I can see how the premise is so absurd that it would be sort of a verbal meme in the late 80s, early 90s when this came out. Like, did you hear what they tried to pull in the fourth Jaws movie? This premise, I tell you, it's the 90s and this is our biggest problem.
Be in the
I know this movie was 1987. I just like the stand-up carried on into yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What's it? The absurdity of the premise really got big in the home video market.
Sure. Yeah. If the movie was sillier, I can really buy into like the idea of like a shark tracking down a family from one continent to the next. I think that, but I don't know. Maybe this one takes itself a little bit too seriously, and it's real boring. So there's not a lot of fun to be had with it either. It's just not, yeah. And famously, this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I'm coming in as the biggest fan of this one out of the three of us, which is rare. I appreciated what they were trying to do, and from what I had read about the film, the production was hurried. Cheap and hurried.
Oh, you can tell.
And
you don't say.
You can tell. And I think most of the biggest problems of this are to the fact that it just, like, if you rush people and don't give them enough resources, it's not going to look good. It's not going to be good. And it really did seem like the people involved were making the most with what they had and trying to earnestly make something that wasn't a laughable joke. They still kind of failed in that, but I was endeared by the gumption of it.
It's that,
and kind of had a good time.
It's that famous creative triangle of needs. You can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have it good, but you can't have all three.
Exactly. And it's not any part of the movie's fault that the people making it went cheap and good. Or sorry, cheap and fast.
Cheap and fast. Because you can have two of the three, but you can't have all three.
Just misspoke.
Yeah. I feel like certainly there are some movies where things have been phoned in and people have been lazy. But I actually think that's quite rare. I think whatever project creatives are working on, usually they're trying to do their best with what they've got and what they're given. I guess I could see that, they were trying. I mean, they made a shark that looked bad, but on a low budget, I think, in that era, pretty good for almost having no money.
Despite the lackluster script, which I agree with Greg is somewhat boring, and the fact that it's tonally maybe not appropriate for the film, how earnest they are, I actually think the performances are pretty good in this film. I don't think anybody's really phoning it in. I think everybody does fine.
Yeah, it's just troubled in that there just really isn't a lot happening. You know? By the third time they go into that little yellow submarine thing, I'm like, all right, they're going to go down there. The shark's going to come. I get it. Like...
it's like not a lot happens in the movie, but it's paced in a way that's fairly engaging, and I found the dialogue like really kind of like trying to be snappy.
Oh, there's a legit great line partway through this movie that made me laugh.
There's a couple, just like it's just hurried. Even the sort of the clip of nothing happening, nothing happens real quickly.
Yeah, I feel like by the time you get to a fourth film, Jaws should basically be a slasher film, right? And we only get two kills.
Sick kills.
And that's it. And that's all we get. And one of them's like in the cold open.
Greg is, as usual, just stepping right all over my fixes. We haven't even gotten to the details yet.
Well, I think you might have said something like that in the chat. I might have stolen that subconsciously. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Well, before I get to the details, I do just when we're talking about the Jaws, the concept of Jaws at large, I had pitched this to you guys. I cannot think of a director. Maybe one, other than Steven Spielberg, who has launched so many movies with franchises with a masterpiece movie that then got a billion terrible sequels. So Jaws and Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. And we all racked our brains trying to think of a second one, and both Greg and I hit Paul Verhoeven. I don't know why that escaped me here. But yeah, he RoboCop and Starship Troopers. Ain't no Spielberg, but those are maybe the only two guys. Everyone else, maybe one franchise to their name. But yeah, I wonder how Spielberg feels about that. That he's just like twice now his shit's been run into the ground.
Well, I guess, you gotta feel good about it that you've made enough hits that people have wanted to duplicate what you've done, right? It's homage is the sincerest form of flattery and all that, right?
I guess I even wonder about that, even directors who've launched one franchise, how does that feel to make a movie and then the studio just wrings it dry? I'm sure they all have differing feelings. It's just, I haven't come across that in any director discourse
I've never had the experience in my creative life of having my own creative thing get away from me, being so popular that something someone else starts taking away. So I wish I had that feeling, but I wonder if it, even if you make a franchise film, I've noticed that most directors don't ever really feel satisfied, and George Lucas may be one of the most famous examples of that, where he made one great movie and then decided that everyone was giving too much credit to the sequels that he did not direct, and tried to direct his own trilogy all on his own, and it did not work. But I feel like you're, no matter how popular something might get, you're as a creative, you're always as soon as you finish something and people immediately respond to it, good or bad, and then you're kind of done with it. And then you start looking back on it and you're like, oh, I wish I could have done this thing differently or this better or whatever. It never ends. You always end up being, you're only as satisfied as your most recent creation. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's valid. And of course, the people responsible for the creation of this movie were written by Michael de Guzman, directed by Joseph Sargent, obviously based on Jaws. This flick in particular was released in 1987. Just like RoboCop, just like me. The cast, of course, Lance Guest as the guy, Lorraine Gary as his mom, Mario Van Peebles as his friend, and Michael Caine as himself. But let's go to the trailer.
Instinctively, man has always been drawn to the sea. Its beauty, its mystery, its secrets. But there is also a vague uncertainty, a sense of intrusion into an alien world, where man is unwelcome and completely at the mercy of the most terrifying predator on Earth. Man's deepest fear has risen again. Jaws, the revenge. This time, it's personal.
The town of Amity is so used to shark attacks that when Sean Brody is eaten by a great white, it really isn't that big of a deal. Even Sean's family seems to get over it pretty quick, with his mother Ellen packing up just days later to visit her non-dead son Michael in the Caribbean, while Ellen tries to get freaky with a sexy local pilot/taxi driver/life coach. Her sharky scent starts tingling. She intuits the fish that gobbled up Sean has followed her to the Isle of Sun and Surf to get another taste of that delicious Brody meat. Ellen must stop Michael from willfully putting himself in danger long enough to deal with their jagged, toothed nemesis. I was trying to give it like a thriller voice.
Yeah.
I bought it.
In a world.
No, I mean, it's scary. It's scarier than the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely not a scary movie, is it?
No.
Yeah, there's the tension is almost none. There's almost no tension in this movie.
No.
That's actually maybe even my biggest gripe with it, because you guys keep saying it was boring, and I did agree initially, but I found the characters kind of endearing, and I found the dialogue snappy enough. It just felt like it when it was time for those, like it was all set up and no payoff. But I didn't hate the setup. I just wish there was more good shark action.
Yeah. I mean, did anybody really believe that the little girl was going to get ate by a shark?
I was hoping.
No, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I guess because there hadn't been a whole lot of deaths by shark beforehand, that you don't really get a sense of like that this shark's gonna do in anyone. I thought one of the folks on Michael's marine biology boat was gonna get it at one point. All those guys survived, which I mean, good for them. But it certainly doesn't do anything for ramping up tension. Yeah,
for a killer shark movie, there's surprisingly few shark kills.
Like, I think it's like 3 total. The one at the beginning, and then the 2 people who die so the kid doesn't have to get eaten.
Yeah.
Was there 2 there? I thought there was just 1.
Oh, maybe it was... Oh, I think one guy got bit and the other lady died.
But that's correct.
And then
so it's 2 kills for this
2
movie?
kills,
yeah,
and like
you
a
think
light
Mario Van
damage.
Peebles gets it, right? You think Mario Van Peebles gets it, but fake out, he lives.
They also do a fake out with Michael Caine in the same scene.
Yep.
Oh, right,
like,
yeah.
Oh, nobody's dead. Nobody dies. Right, okay.
Everyone lives.
My headcanon is the shark had to spit out Mario Van Peebles to make room for the boat.
Sure, that makes sense.
He took one bite of Mario Van Peebles and was like, "This isn't a Brody." Blah.
Isn't there also a line that they said he ate my plane? So I guess he ate a plane and a boat, so he was probably full up.
Yeah.
Yeah, this shark eats a lot of vehicles.
What did you guys think of that sort of last minute plot device where the shark was it attracted to electromagnetic pulses of some kind?
Yeah, it would have been fine if there was good shark action on either side of it.
And for that matter, if there had been maybe more setup for it, but
yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's an 80-yard line where when they're exiting the plane, and they say that the plane has some sort of like electromagnetic properties, and the shark is attracted to it. And I was like, where'd that come from?
I thought they
So
were
they could justify
they
the
were
shark
talking about it
attacking the
in the base, like in the bottom of the ship as well, like they're down in the cabin of the ship.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's weird. Because while they were talking about that when they're building their heart thing or whatever, like it didn't seem to me that they were talking about it being attracted to the metal at all. But maybe I was just bored out of my skull and didn't pick up on it.
I was like weirdly engaged with this movie. Like it never really lost me. It was until I said that at the very end where I laughed out loud when Mario Van Peebles is back. But yeah, it just needed cool, exciting horror thriller things to happen. The stuff around it was not terrible. It was Michael Caine. It was smiling good actors.
Yeah. Laureen Gary is pretty good. She turns in a pretty decent performance. The only thing about it is like her performance is, I guess it's confusing because the script is so bad. Like when like her son dies off the top of the movie from a shark attack. This is like Christmas Eve, and then they're flying to the Bahamas. I think 3 days later or something like that, and they're talking about having fun again, and it's like, man, you just like buried your son. Like that's not where your headspace would be at.
You're allowed to grieve, yeah. The timeline was fishy. My understanding is it was New Year's or Christmas Eve, the first day out on the water, because he's like, you got me working till Christmas Eve or on Christmas Eve, so. I don't know. That doesn't really matter, but it's the timeline is confusing.
I think like whether it's timeline or not, it doesn't really matter. It's the problem is that the movie doesn't deal with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like the son died and that's sort of the exciting incident, but then it's like, okay, forget that. We've moved on, and so have the characters, kind of thing. Which is really weird to like have, a nice familiar setup like that. It's the driving force for Ellen Brody, and yet it feels like she gets forgotten about in almost the entire second act.
Yeah, the second act really focuses on Other Son.
Yeah.
And then like kind of has her off doing her thing in the background, and then like she's kind of back into the fore in the third act, and it's a little scattered. Like the movie can't decide who it wants the main character to be.
Well, it shouldn't be Ellen in my mind. Like it's
agreed, 100%.
Yeah, it's like her. She's the driving force, and yet we just kind of sit on the boat with her son Michael for
most of the
about
act.
40 minutes, and it's not very exciting. And he doesn't really have, like, he doesn't really. I guess does he have a character arc? That's a question. Does Michael Brody have a character arc?
Do any of them?
Like the movie,
yeah,
the movie
his
does.
arc is he does. Oh, sorry. Go.
Sorry, the movie does confront him because he decides not to report the shark because Mario Van Peebles wants to study it, and so he keeps it to himself until there's been danger and his daughter nearly gets eaten, and then the movie tries to confront him with that by having them like, why didn't you say anything about the shark? As though he knew the shark was going to specifically target them, and like, his mom wasn't crazy. But they try to confront him with that, but then that is dropped. Like there's no resolution to that. It's never talked about again. Like they kill the shark and then everybody's happy. End of movie. Like, so no, his arc gets kind of aborted. And I feel like that might be in part because, and this, I know some of our listeners mentioned this too. There was a whole like explanation for what was going on that got carved out of the movie, and it feels like there's parts of this movie missing. Like it feels like this movie was cobbled together out of what was left of the story when a part of it was thrown out.
Yeah, you're referring to like a fairly significant supernatural plot element to it. Where what is it? It's it's like some kind of
voodoo curse
that's put on the shark or put on
the Brodies, as I recall.
Put on the Brodies, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense, I guess.
And I guess the studio decided that was too silly. Maybe I honestly don't know the reason why it was cut out, but it feels like there's holes in this movie.
Well, it certainly makes believing that the shark swam from Amity to the Bahamas a real stretch.
And on that note, also knew where they were going.
Yeah. And I also enjoyed that Ellen seemed to have, as I said in the plot summary, like a shark sense. It's just like,
she remembers old movies.
Oh yeah, that's her superpower.
Just flashbacks to other movies.
Which, by the way, that made the climax of this film like one of the most confusing minutes of a movie I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so here's what I think happened. I think that they got to the end of the movie and they were completely out of money. And I don't think they had any more left to shoot a shark blowing up. So they decided to show the old shark getting blown up in flashback form and like kind of like cut back and forth between that and what was going on the boat in the climax in this Jaws 4 movie. And it almost broke my brain as I was trying to understand what it was that they were trying to go for, because like Ellen Brody seems to like there's not really a lot going on with her husband in this movie. Like she mentions him a couple times, but it's not like he was a key force in the movie. And then for some reason, right at the climax, we see the climax of the original Jaws happening right in front of us. It's so stupid.
Yeah, the shark attack scenes were also kind of confusing because of the kind of frenetic editing that they were doing to disguise how cheap the shark was. So, like, a lot of the shark attacks were just a bunch of confusing images. There was no real like, I hate to say it, there was no story to them. Like, you can't follow the action of what's happening. It's just a confusing mess.
And what's interesting about that, Scott, is like that is true of the shark attack scenes. And I appreciate that that's what they tried to do. Like that's the best they could do is like, just make it frenetic and no one will notice. But that's also, they try to pull the same trick with what happens to multiple characters in the last scene that Greg was just talking about. Yep. And it's like, no, you might get away with that for Shark Bite, but you can't get away with that for 5 minutes of climax. Just being like, wait, is he alive? Who ate a plane? What? Like, it's the same technique of just like hoping you don't, like putting a bunch of frames up and hoping you don't notice that it makes no sense. And that's what endeared me so much, like made me laugh. I'm like, yeah, they thought they could get away with that at the end and like no one would know. It's like, it's over. You've seen all the movie we have for you. Fuck you.
Yeah, we have your money. You sat through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they might have done better had they had done this more like one of those Asylum type movies where they're just getting a whole bunch of like nature footage of a great white shark and showing that instead of their terrible model.
Actually, that probably, like, go to SeaWorld, shoot some B-roll of a shark.
Yeah, pay your ticket, pay your $12.95, go up to the window, shoot right through the window, and that would have worked better. Because at least it would have looked like the damn thing was swimming. Oh, that reminds me that, like, I'm pretty sure that shark had, like, kind of teleportation powers. Not just because he went from continent to continent, but because when Michael Brody goes down into the water, the deep water, to try and escape the shark, he runs into like a sunken ship, and he's like swimming through all these really tight corridors and stuff like that, and like this shark is like way bigger than those corridors, and he's following him no problem through all these things. So I assume that like maybe that was part of the voodoo curse. The shark didn't have a problem, just kind of like squeezed through everything.
Yeah, no, that scene was, I say it was fun because it was probably the scene with the most amount of genuine tension, where it's like, whoa, he made it to that door just in time. Which again, it's like a low bar. I don't know why I'm going to bat for this movie so hard, but, that at least, like, I appreciated the effort with that scene, because they do show a scene where the camera's looking straight up and you can see the shark swim over it. So you get they try to have you get the impression that the shark is like poking around, like sniffing around on all the different sides. It just doesn't show it very well because it doesn't have the means to do it, but that was the implication. And then eventually it busts in and gets him on the ladder. I did chuckle to myself. He's next to a ladder and the ladder breaks and I'm like, oh shit, how's he going to get up there? He's underwater.
Yeah, he invents a way of getting the bends real fast.
Yeah.
He escapes just like he has an air tank and he knocks the top off of it and rides it all the way up. And I was like, man, that guy's blood is going to be boiling when he gets to the surface.
Yeah, but he didn't get eaten by a shark, so.
Yeah. One might be better than the other. I'm not sure whether I'd want to get eaten by the shark or have the bends, because I hear the bends sucks real bad.
Well, I think we've thoroughly picked apart this movie that was just trying its best, you guys. We've thoroughly picked apart this famously crummy movie. But we're not here to criticize, we're here to fix. So let's go to hear from our friends at the Alberta Podcast Network. And when we come back, we are going to fix Jaws 4. Make it worthy of the legacy of Jaws, the first one. Alberta Blue Cross understands that running a small business is tough, and they understand that business owners in Alberta are busy. Let Alberta Blue Cross give you peace of mind with a group benefit plan. They offer health, dental, life, and disability coverage for your employees. Alberta Blue Cross group benefit plans are easy to manage anywhere, anytime, and on any device, making it easy for you and your employees to access. I can speak from personal experience. My employer provides us with a Alberta Blue Cross group benefit plan, and it's easy as heck to go in to the website, get my claims, find out when they're coming, get direct deposit. Personally can advocate it's easy as heck. I appreciate that my employers use it. Would you believe I don't podcast professionally? To learn more and explore your options, head to ab.bluecross.ca. Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. Greg, explain to me how you plan to fix Jaws 4.
Okay, so stick with me on this because I think this might be kind of bold. I don't know, maybe I'm overselling it, but okay, so the opening sequence plays out largely the same with Ellen and Sean having moments together before Sean goes to work on the water on Christmas Eve. Sean's death, however, is like a little bit more ambiguous. Like it's a stormy night and the waters are choppy and we kind of get the Jaws motif to sort of imply that, that's what's going to happen. But we never actually see the shark. However, Sean does drown in all the stormy chaos. So then we cut to 2 years later, and his mom, Ellen, has closed herself off from her friends and family and refuses to go near the water, convinced her son was done in by a shark, right? Michael and Carla, meanwhile, are living in the Caribbean or the Bahamas and are expecting a baby. So they convince a reluctant Ellen to fly down to the Bahamas so that she doesn't miss the birth of her grandchild. Right, so that's the impetus to actually get her down there. Shortly after Ellen arrives, like a tourist drowns in the ocean, and like once again, Ellen's convinced that a shark has struck again. And in fact, we don't as the audience, we actually see the tourist get attacked by a great white.
Yeah.
But no one believes Ellen. They think that she's kind of losing her marbles a little bit, especially when she slowly starts insisting that the shark is one and the same as the one in Amity. She's got she's got this, and they know she's a grieving mother and stuff like that. So then another person drowns in the water, and despite Ellen's insistence it's a shark, the local authorities tell her, it's actually just an unusual, dangerous undertone this season that may be taking swimmers by surprise. And Ellen ends up all alone and just, convinced that she's right, and she ends up taking that schooner out into the sea to prove that she's right. And then she has what appears to be a battle with the Amity shark. And then, in the course of the climax of this version of the film, she starts to realize that, like, it isn't real and that she's been seeing illusions brought on by her grief the entire time. And it was, in fact, like swimmers were just like drowning by coincidence. And then, with her fear of the water kind of conquered, now she ends up staying in the Bahamas and lives a long, happy life. So that's kind of like, yeah, my, my fix is to like, for this to be a Jaws movie and not a Jaws movie.
Your fix is that the shark is her trauma.
Yeah.
I like it. I think it's an interesting play on it, but I think that moviegoers would be super disappointed in it.
That's why I say it's bold.
I do.
Bold.
Yeah, what I like about it is it does solve some of the problems with this one. Is that where it's just like it's all tell no show.
Yeah.
It's just like it's not interesting. So take everything you said, Greg. If I do love it, I'm frankly fine with the shark is trauma. But take everything you said, make that the first half of the movie. Because the one thing I kind of like that this one tries to do is it's like, Mom, you're crazy. Mom, you're crazy. Oh shit, Mom might not be crazy. Mom goes, I'm gonna not be crazy anymore. And he goes, oh god damn it, now I got information that could actually, my mom wasn't crazy, but if I tell her, then she goes back to being crazy. So I liked that kind of just slightly, information coming slightly too late, slightly too early.
Yeah.
And if you take what you have there and at some point, maybe even like, fine, Mom, I'll take you out in the schooner. Would that make you happy? And then the two of them are out there and they come back to shore being like, my mom's not crazy, guys. And then we spend the last half of the movie fighting a shark.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that works too.
Except the shark is the shark from Amity from the first movie.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason it is the shark is because it is a supernatural stalker. It is the Jason Voorhees of sharks. Because my fix is this is a slasher movie now. And you build a tense, you have a first act that builds up these likable characters we like, and then in the second act, they're all in danger, and they start getting picked off by a shark who cannot be killed. It is an undead monster shark, and they need to figure out how to stop it the way that you try to figure out how to stop Michael Myers, which is not effectively. And then you end it with a cliffhanger because the shark might not still be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works too. Just like I would definitely love to see a lot more violence in this movie. So my version doesn't have that. Mine is more of like a thinky PC. But like, yeah, I'm fine with it. Stopping that halfway through and just being like, nope, now it's wall to wall violence. That would be fun too.
Yeah, I mean they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. My version of the movie does have a higher body count, but probably has a few more throwaway characters that are kind of surrounding Michael and Ellen who can get chomped on.
Sure. And again, I'm going to bat for not losing that. Mom's crazy. Maybe she isn't. I'm going to stop sort of timeline. And I think it works just fine as the momentum to keep a merciless slashing machine going.
Oh yeah.
Because
there's still some mysterious deaths, right? Because in our collaborative version, there's still some mysterious deaths leading up to the end of the first half.
Yep. Just like a slasher. Yep.
But it's ambiguous. Could it be the shark? It couldn't possibly be the shark. The shark was killed. The shark was possibly killed 2 other times because this is the 4th movie. I don't know.
That shark was killed and it swam to the Bahamas? Come on, guys.
Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. It couldn't possibly be the case. And then, oh, this is the shark. This is the shark. And I shot it in the eye and it didn't stop. Like, oh my God. Yeah. No, I think if you really want to lean into Jaws as like a thriller franchise, you establish it is Bruce the shark. It's back from the dead, and it's back for revenge. And you just lean into it, and you make it into a supernatural slasher, except it's also a shark.
Yeah. And then because you've made so much money making a really fun Jaws 4, you get to do Jaws 5, Jaws in space.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Jaws goes to hell.
Yeah.
The final sharkening. Absolutely. But here's the thing. It's ridiculous and it's dumb, I'll admit, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the problems with this movie is it's so joyless.
Yeah.
And just leaning into it being as I said, the Jason Voorhees of sharks you're just leaning into the silly, and I think there's an audience for that. I think you can work with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're at the point in the franchise where you need to find a way of reinventing it because everyone understands the motions of Jaws at that point, right? It's like the Fast and Furious, kind of progression, right? You get to they got to their fifth movie and they're like, okay, now it's like a kind of like a
now it's Mission Impossible.
Now it's a spy thriller and all these kind of things, right? So
it's like you said just last episode with Ghostbusters Afterlife. You appreciate a sequel that gives you a reason for its existence. And part of that can't be just to tell the same story. Part of it has to be, I'm doing something new. And I kind of agree with that. And
supernatural undead shark. That or just more sharks. That I wasn't sure if that was going to be one of my picks, but in this context, I'm going to pitch it. Just like more than one shark, you just go wide. If you can't go big, you go wide. But that is not my actual fix. Because I want to touch on what you said, Scott, about it being kind of joyless. One of the few moments of joy was Mario Van Peebles' character.
Yes, in general.
The main character had his moments. Very, very cute scene with his kid. And just by proxy of being in a scene with the very charismatic Mario Van Peebles, that first scene where the two of them are like on the job for the first day was very endearing. The back and forth they had, the like friendly ribbing. I bought it and I enjoyed that scene so much so that my pitch is that the wife character actually doesn't do anything in this movie. So you cut her entirely. The little girl is the first son who dies kid, and her and grandma go to the Bahamas with uncle to take a load off, whatever, carry on. And Mario Van Peebles and the played by the guy and his friend, Lance Guest and Mario Van Peebles, or Michael Brody and Jake, are a couple. I ship them. My fix is we ship them. They're a couple. The dynamic on that boat was very flirty, and I kind of just was like, the wife doesn't do anything in this movie.
Sure.
So Cutter, they're a couple.
Yeah, and then by the end
of
the movie, all
that money you saved not paying that actor that played the wife, you put into the shark exploding budget.
And that's fine, because by the end of the movie, assuming that both Michael Brody and Jake survive, they adopt his niece.
Yeah,
they take her in. That works for me. You get a whole family coming back together and coming through the trauma of having to deal with a supernatural shark monster. Mm-hmm. An objectively, undeniably supernatural shark monster.
More violent, gayer, supernatural.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Into it. I really wonder if if all of these fixes would probably also apply to Jaws 2 and Jaws 3. Just do more, better, and more interesting.
God, one day we're going to get asked to do Jaws 2 or Jaws 3, and we're going to have to go back, and then we're going to be like, now how can we fit this into our Jaws cinematic universe and make it work with our Jaws 4 fix?
With our Jaws. Brilliant. And speaking of brilliant, our listeners are brilliant. They're hitting us with comments, and we're going to read them. If you want to get in on the action for the next episode, please follow us on social media at I Have Some Notes on Twitter, at I Have Some Notes Pod on Instagram, / I Have Some Notes, at the end of Facebook.com. We appreciate your input. It always makes me smile, especially this first comment. I love this one. Dan Brodrib says, 90 minutes of sharks doing shark things. Living happily is the best revenge.
It's just like a nature documentary being narrated by David Attenborough.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Reese Howell says, a voiceover by Vincent Price of the shark's thoughts as it goes about its day. Better? Maybe. Different? Definitely.
Not too much different than that first comment, actually.
Okay, I like this idea. Let's run with this a bit here, because we got time. This was a breezy one, much like the movie. This movie was a merciful hour 90 minutes, or hour 30 rather, 90 minutes total. But I want to run with this idea. So, what if the premise of Jaws 4 is just from Jaws' perspective, where he's the protagonist, and we hear his voiceover. Maybe it's Vincent Price, maybe it's Chris Pratt. Who cares? And it's just being harassed every time it goes to the shore. These people are harassing it. Maybe it is like kind of an anti-hero Grinch vibe.
Or it's like Shrek, like where he's like, because they won't get out of my swamp.
I think if you're doing that though, you really need to lean into it. You need to retell Jaws, the original Jaws, from the shark's perspective.
Yeah, and it takes on a Grinch-esque tone of like revenge. Speaking of this movie, it's a Christmas movie. It's a Christmas movie.
Technically a Christmas movie.
Yeah, and to the point where I'm gonna say we're done. I just want to take this moment to use my platform as a podcaster. I'm gonna get up on my little soapbox while we're talking Christmas movies. I am done with the Die Hard is a Christmas movie discourse. It's played out. I don't want to hear about it. There are rage face comics about eating too much bacon that are more relevant than this meme. And so I think the new ironic Christmas movie should be Jaws 4. Like, if you really want to be like Christmas movie set at Christmas or Christmas movie, so Jaws 4 is a Christmas movie. Put your ironic movie watching money where your mouth is and watch Jaws 4 this Christmas.
Well, I can jump on my soapbox for a second. It seems like one of those debates that's sort of invented for people to argue about things on the internet.
Oh,
like,
precisely.
Like when people post about like whether they like or don't like raisins, or the types of things that bananas go with, or any of that kind of stuff.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean for the noble hot dog if it is or is not declared a sandwich? Is it subject to new taxes? Is it, like...
I do appreciate the worldview of the man who, like, can't live in a world where the hot dog is not a sandwich.
If anyone comes at me with Die Hard 4 stuff, I'm going to tell them to go watch Jaws 4. Anyway, moving on. Levi Breederland says, didn't know there was even a 4, or a 3 for that matter. Technically, it's Jaws 3D. So, have you guys ever tried those old school 3D glasses?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember like the sticker books you used to get? Yeah. I think that's about all I really use them for. I don't think I've ever watched a movie with them.
I don't know that I've ever watched a movie with old school 3D glasses either. No.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. I think we all had the books as a kid, but the 90s, such things weren't sad in the 90s. We had multicolor glasses books. Anyway, I can't imagine how that would work in a movie like back in the day when they were putting on the like red blue ones. Like, it can't have looked good. Like it.
Yeah, I guess I wonder like how much your eyes would adjust to it, but I also wonder if like a lot of people maybe felt like their eyes were being strained. Not to mention like those glasses were never comfortable. Like they're paper. They were probably digging into your ears by the end of it, right?
I can't help but think of the number of movies where you saw a cool kid in like the 50s or 60s who would go around wearing their 3D glasses because they were cool. And every time I see that, I'm just like, how can you see? How are you comfortable? Like, I've worn those before. They're not great.
Definitely don't drive with them.
They don't make you look cool. I'm too cool to see right, you guys.
A drive-in movie with those things and people are peeling away, still wearing them. Sweet. That's the cinema experience. Through some plastic, through a windshield, onto a screen outside. Anyway, moving on. Robin from Cinematological says, restore the supernatural element from the original script where the shark was targeted at the Brodies because of dark magic.
Yeah, we touched on that.
Did you guys catch that? He says it at the beginning. He's like, "Oh, Mom, you don't believe all that voodoo, do you?"
Yeah, I did catch that.
But it was in the context that it exists. It was more of a like, "Come on, you're thinking crazy." Like they managed to keep that line and not have it stand out glaringly as a reference to something that was cut out.
Yeah,
or they weren't able to remove it because it was it was stuck in there in an important place.
To be fair, in our version of the script, the shark isn't targeted at the Brodies explicitly because of dark magic. It's targeted at the Brodies because it's an undead monster that is actively seeking conscious revenge.
That's fair. Yeah.
Nathan Martin says, "Oh God, I'm just praying for you." Well, thanks, Nathan.
We made it.
Yeah. Are you going to bring back the voodoo curse that they cut out? This movie isn't fixable. It's just stupid.
I disagree.
I'm also just surprised.
I mean, not that it's stupid, but that it's isn't fixable.
I'm just very surprised. I don't think there's ever an episode where Nathan Martin and I aren't in some kind of disagreements. And in this case, this is the first time I've ever seen Nathan be like pretty explicitly negative about a movie.
Yeah.
And this is the one time I'm like fairly positive on it. I'm like, they tried. Love it. Love the discourse here on I Have Some Notes. At Least Haunted says, how can one improve on perfection? Jaws 4: The Revenge. It's just Jaws the Revenge, but that's fine. Jaws the Revenge is a perfect disaster. It has given us decades of fun and laughter at that fact. What you should do is ask, how could a Jaws 5 surpass Jaws 4 while also being a good movie? Go the aliens route, more sharks.
Yeah, like Liam said before, go wide instead of tall.
Yeah.
In some sense, a lot of these have already been done with like the shark tornado movies and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Turns out those weren't good.
The Meg just has a bigger shark.
You know what? I have a soft spot for the Meg. A little soft spot there. It's not a good movie, but it's certainly the right kind of bonkers that will keep you definitely more engaged than Jaws 4.
It's a more fun movie.
Yeah, it's kind of on that. What was that rock movie that's sort of like Towering Inferno? Skyscraper?
Skyscraper. We watched it.
Yeah. We did it for the show. The Meg is kind of like the Jaws version of that. Like it's just good enough.
It's a spectacle movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew Craig says, wow, y'all are brave. I think it gets mired in the lore. Brody's wife, a shark that remembers. It's the attachment to the original that makes it a mess. That's what I said about Ghostbusters last week. A better option would have been for her to be in the Caribbean when a great white went on a rampage, and she is able to provide insight as someone who has been through it before. Although even that is a stretch, why would she go anywhere near the ocean after what her family's been through? Ultimately, I think a good way to save it would be to essentially treat it as an anthology telling the story of a community dealing with a rogue shark or sharks. The Caribbean is a great setting. Use it.
Yeah, for a woman who believes that there's a supernatural shark specifically hunting her and her family, she makes the decision to go to an island without much pushback, when really the safest place to be would be on a mountain in the middle of the continental United States, somewhere deep in the Rockies, far from the ocean. Yeah, good luck getting to me here, shark.
Yeah. That's why I added the little the expecting baby thing, just so there was sort of like
and that's solid.
A definite reason for her to end up there, despite being super afraid of the water.
Now, if we don't keep any of the rest of your pitch, Greg, the setup is spot on. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Though I had heard the criticism, if you think a shark is targeting you specifically, why would you go to the Bahamas? I heard that criticism a bunch before I sat down and watched this movie, and I feel like it sells it a little short. It's not a terrible justification that she's like gonna go get away with her son who works down there. Like there's already someone who's got like a homestead set up. It's in the way the criticism makes it sound, it's like a frivolous vacation. Like, oh my God, my son died. Everyone I love died. Let's go to the Bahamas. There's like some impetus there. And so, again, I'm not really like trying to defend the movie, but I think it's kind of got a Nickelback thing of like, it's fun to shit on, cause it is bad, but like, okay. It's easy too. It's really easy, the internet.
And to be perfectly fair to Ellen Brody, it doesn't make sense that a shark from Amity could make it to the Caribbean in 3 days and know exactly what island she's on. Mm-hmm. So, like, any rational person would be like, I'm going away from the shark. I could literally go anywhere in the world and it will not find me.
Okay. But that's it for listener comments. Thank you, everybody who contributed. This was our Halloween movie.
Was it?
We picked a not very scary horror movie for this Halloween.
Whoops. I'll blame my wife. Am I allowed to do that?
Well, I was going to say these are obviously suggested by listeners. We don't always cite the listener, but in this case, it was suggested by Aaron. Did Aaron watch it with you?
Oh yeah, I told her. I explicitly told her she's not allowed not to watch it.
Good. Amanda could not wait to leave the house.
Fair.
Well, thank you all for listening. Of course, like I said, you can follow us on social media. Please, wherever it is you're listening to this, give it a subscribe, a rate, a review, wherever it is you're listening to podcasts. We really do appreciate it.
You know, Jaws the Revenge had a pretty slapdash story, and that's been fairly well criticized over the years. You know who doesn't have slapdash stories? Makeshift Stories, a bi-weekly journey into the improbable, speculative fiction, sci-fi, and fantasy for all ages, created by Alan V. Hare. You can listen to that and more right now at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
And hey, do you like Brendan Fraser? Do you like Jungles? Do you like Georges? We're going to be doing George of the Jungle next in 2 weeks.
Watch out for that tree.
Watch out for that podcast release. Until then, I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.
Welcome to Super Typical Megabank. How can we disappoint you today?
Hi, I'd like to open an account.
May I pressure you into considering a pro-disadvantage, high-regret, impersonal, everyday inconvenient savings plan with added compounded confusion at no additional discount or apology? It's one of our top disappointers.
I feel so...
Disappointed?
Yeah.
Another unsatisfied customer. Next!
If your bank makes you feel like this, it's time you talk to us. Connect First Credit Union. Bank on a brighter future.